Hello everybody, today we're going to be doing chapter 15 of the Summa Logicae by William of Ockham. This chapter is named that the universal is not a thing outside the mind, and this chapter is going to contain Ockham's arguments against any kind of Platonic realism about forms. So the first argument: if universals were particular substances, then Socrates would be a universal, for there would be no way to tell a universal particular substance from a plain particular. 2. Socrates is not a universal. 3. Therefore, no particular substance is a universal. The second argument is a little bit more convoluted. Every substance is one and not many, or many and not one. If a substance is one, then it is not universal. If a substance is many, it is either many particular substances or many universal substances. If it is many particular substances, then one substance would be several particular substances, and would not be distinguished from many particular substances, which is just to say that they would just be particulars then and not universal. If it is many universals, then you can ask of each universal if it is universal or particular. If it is a particular substance, then it is no longer universal. If it is a universal substance, then it is either a collection of particular substances and or a universal substance. Universal substances. So you'll notice premise 6 just kicks us back to premise 3 here. Now, a quick addendum on this second argument. What it's kind of driving at, I think, is that there's no clear definition of a universal that's been given that exists apart from particular substances. And second, it's trying to show that this cannot be a particular substance. But yeah, argument 3. If a universal were to be one substance existing in a particular substance, it would be capable of existing without the substance it's in, for everything that's naturally prior to something else can exist by itself with God's power. But this is absurd. That would be to say that greenness could be without a surface to be green on, or that temperature could be you could have a specific temperature without anything to exist at that temperature. Therefore, universals cannot be substances that compose particular substances. Argument 4 and 4.1, these are together because they are similar and they kind of drive at the same point. No individual could be created from nothing if there were universals, because the universal would pre-exist the individual. But God creates from nothing, therefore there are no separate universals. And then the second, 4.1, would be God could not annihilate any substance one, because he would also need to annihilate all of the other substances that share the universals of substance one, and they would also then cease to exist. 2. God is capable of annihilating particular substances, therefore particular substances don't instantiate universals. 5. An individual could not be construed as anything more than a collection of universals, but this would mean that there is nothing to distinguish particulars from universals, which is absurd, so there cannot be universals which constitute particulars. 6. If there was something common to the essence of Christ and Judas, there would be something of Christ that would be miserable and damned for eternity. That is insane. Therefore, there are no universals, at least any shared between Christ and Judas. Then he gives a large number of quotes from Aristotle and Averroes. I won't read all of these, but if you pause it, you can read them. They have the citations attached. Then we have Ockham's position. Every universal is an intention in the mind, likely identical to the act of understanding. So you'll remember, conceptual terms are the terms that by which you understand things in the world, and Occam thinks that they're identical to your act of understanding the world. And then finally he has a quote from Avicenna from his commentary on the Metaphysics. I say, therefore, that there are three senses of universal, for we say that something is a universal if, like man, it is actually predicated of many things, and we also call an intention a universal if it could be predicated of men. An intention is also called a universal if there is nothing inconceivable about its being predicated of many. And he gives a quick argument in favor. 1, no substance is ever predicated of anything. And then first, there's some support for this. Propositions would then be composed of substances. However, particular substances cannot exist in the mind, speech, or writing, so no propositions could be made up of particular substances. And then the second support, propositions are composed of universals. Substances aren't universals, so the propositions cannot be made up of substances. Then the second premise is nothing is capable of signifying multiple things except an intention of the soul or a conventional sign. And then finally, therefore, only intentions and conventional signs are universal. And that'll be all for today. This was a really interesting chapter. This has a lot of the stuff Occam was famous for, especially the argument about annihilation, which I've heard a few times previously.